Hello, everybody, and welcome to this edition of the Great America Show. I'm Lou Dobbs. Thank you for being with us today. And as Maltz has warned about the spread of deadly fentanyl poisoning throughout the United States. That poison distributed by the Mexican drug cartels who work with the Chinese and kill those hundreds of thousands of Americans. Derek Maltz is the former director of the Special Operations Division of the Drug Enforcement Agency. And Derek, it's great to have you back with us. Welcome. The fentanyl death toll of young Americans still rising. Hundreds of thousands killed at the hands of the cartels and the Chinese communists who are supplying them with precursor chemicals and laundering their money. What can we do with a border that is wide open for the cartels?
Well, thanks for having me back, Lou. And unfortunately, I work with the families around America who are burying their children at record levels. Right now, we're losing about 9,000 Americans a month from drugs, and the majority of these deaths are from fentanyl poisoning because the cartels are working with their partners in China, and they're actually delivering, like there's a tsunami of this poisonous substance coming into America. And they're very deceptive because the majority of kids are, addicted to some type of medicine maybe at times, or maybe they're just seeking some help from depression or anxiety, and they're taking these fake pills that are being produced in these dirty, filthy labs in Mexico. Cartels are taking total advantage. They're making billions of dollars, not only from the drug smuggling, but from the migrant smuggling. So it's a new level. And actually, Lou, synthetic drug production is something we've never seen at this level, and it's a game changer in America.
And a lot of people are dying. A number one killer of young American males, what is it, 18 to 45. We're in a crisis. But I'm thinking, how long have we been in a crisis? The Mexican drug cartels have been operating for a half century now, crossing the line, what used to be called the wet line in Arizona, crossing that border, peddling their wares, and Americans die. This country has to take some responsibility, don't you think, Derek? Because
absolutely,
we've been accepting as collateral damage the deaths of untold numbers of Americans for all that time. We've had a Just Say No campaign. We've had a war on drugs, and all of it was fiction, wasn't it?
Well, let's just look at it like this. I mean, the vulnerability that the Biden administration caused at our border has created a huge business opportunity over the last 2 years for the Mexican cartels, the Chinese criminal networks, and the corrupt and soft on crime leaders in Mexico. So it's not just drug smuggling, it's migrant smuggling, sex trafficking, gun running. But the big difference, Lou, is that over the last several years, we're getting these deadly substances coming out of these labs in Mexico. Before that, it was China. But China's behind all of it. They're sitting back using the cartels as a proxy to do their dirty work to destroy and destabilize our country. But the policies that this administrator put into place actually has created a whole new problem for this country when it comes to this crisis.
I understand what you're saying, and I agree with you. My problem as a man who's followed this story from Yuma, Arizona, San Luis, I am just sick and tired of it. I am really disgusted that the law enforcement of the federal government, and I know that you ran a good part of the DEA. I know many great Americans like you who have tried to stop this, working for various agencies, the DEA, the FBI even, but local law enforcement, the Border Patrol, of course. We have failed miserably because we haven't, in my opinion, ever expressed the political will to shut down that border and to protect this nation. And we've just accepted it. Now the deaths are just huge. I mean, we're talking about over 100,000 people. The official number last year was 107,000 Americans died. You and I both know that's bull. It had to be considerably higher. Your thoughts about why we can't muster the courage, the will to shut this thing down?
Well, great points, Lou. So let me make it clear. I'm very big supporter of law enforcement efforts. I know what they've been doing and the seizures they've been making, but that is not good enough because the cartels are like an army. They have to be treated like an army. And we're too soft with Mexico. That's been the case. We've been kissing their butts for way too long. And they're the ones on the cartel's payroll. They're facilitating the movement of these drugs across the country by keeping the cartels protected. That's why I've been a big supporter at declaring the cartels terrorists and also the use of military capabilities to actually shut down the command and control elements of the cartels. It's a real simple analogy. If you had a massive leak in your house from a pipe that exploded, you would shut down the main valve. That'd be the first thing you have to do. Well, our main valve for fentanyl poisoning is from the Mexican cartels in Mexico. So the U.S. government should be way more aggressive dealing with the Mexican officials and using all our power to be able to offer them support, just like we did in Colombia years ago. The problem right now you have, Lou, is that this president opened the border wide open. He doesn't want to continue to talk about the border. I mean, our border czar is nowhere to be found. She was declared the one who's going to save us, and she hasn't even been found. But the thing that's even more important is this Chinese influence and the Chinese money launderers picking up money all over the country. And this president will never talk about China because we know the business deals are overwhelming that he and his family or his family did with China. So they don't want to talk about it. But you're right. We need the political will. But I wish to God somebody would recognize that we can't rely on the soft on crime, corrupt leaders in Mexico to save American kids. We have to take action. We need to shut that border down. We need to be bold. We need to be aggressive and always put the American families and kids first. Right now, they're treated last, right? 1.5 million gotaways over the last couple of years. We don't know who the hell these people are. Just look at the terror watch list numbers. I mean, we already have 82, including the guy last week or this week, Afghan guy on the terror watch list crossing in California. Last year, we had 98. When President Trump was in office in 2020, there were only 3 from the terror watch list. Now, just think about how many are in the country already. It's absolutely disgusting. And you're right. We have to be way more aggressive. And I'm sick and tired of it too, because I talk to the families. But you know what else where we failed, America, Lou? We don't even talk about this poisoning with our kids. The kids aren't listening to podcasts, mainstream media, cable news. They're on the video reels on social media. But we don't even have social media influencers, athletes, and celebrities going into those sites and teaching these kids that they're going to die if they take a pill that they think is Xanax or Percocet. So we have failed miserably on the education front, and demand is way too high. Mental illness, anxiety, depression is off the charts. Kids are going to get medicated with medication, and they're taking deadly drugs, and that's the problem.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you. That's a big problem, a critical problem, an urgent problem. But we've got so many big, urgent, critical problems facing this country right now, Derek, as you note, as you know well, and as you are alerting the nation. I want to take up 85,000 kids missing from U.S. government custody. No one seems to know where they are. The suspicion is that they've been handed over to sex trafficking. We're going to continue our conversation with Derek Maltz. Stay with us. We'll be right back. We're back now talking with Derek Maltz, former DEA. 85,000 kids, we hear from a HHS official 2 weeks ago. No one really responds. 85,000 kids, minors, in the hands of sex traffickers who have been in the custody of U.S. authorities. This is outrageous. And I'm going to use the expression again. I'm sick and tired of everyone understanding what the tragedy is, the pain, the suffering, the misery, and the death that is the result of this administration. Biden is a killer. He's aligned. We talked about the Chinese. This administration is aligned with that weak Mexican government that you talked about. Lopez Obrador is an absolute tool of these cartels. The cartels run that border in Mexico. And guess what? With Biden in office, we now know that they have operational control of our border because Biden has handed it over to them. Am I right or wrong?
No, you're 100% right. I mean, in a way, if you look at conspiracy laws and facilitation, the definition, our government has facilitated the largest sex trafficking and human smuggling operation in the history of America. That's really the facts. I don't think anyone can dispute that. I mean, Bill Malugin put out a statistic this past week. Like last week, there were like 83,000 apprehensions in a week, which could fill up the entire Dallas Cowboys football stadium just in 1 week. We had 3 days, 10,000 each day apprehensions. This is stuff we've never seen. What's happening, though, in a very simple way, is the cartels are master entrepreneur business people as well. They are studying our weaknesses and taking total advantage of the vulnerabilities. So they understand how we operate. They're flooding the zone, as we call it. They're putting mass amounts of migrants into a certain zone, consuming the resources of Border Patrol, and then just sending all their high-value targets into America. Every American should be very concerned about what's in our country now because of this wide-open border and the lack of accountability. And you're right. When it comes to those children, when Donald Trump was in office, I don't remember all the details, but they were so, crazy about all these kids being split up from their families and everything. And now you don't even hear about it on the news as 85,000 kids are somewhere in America. Probably most of them are probably being trafficked, right? That's what's happening. These stash houses. When I went to the border, Lou, one of the things I couldn't believe when I got briefed by DPS and the brave men and women at the CBP, what I learned, my head is I'm still like pissed off. These stash houses where they pile in, hundreds of migrants with no air conditioning because they're not paying enough money. They don't have water. Then they pile them in tractor trailers and they burn to death inside their bodies because the temperature is over 100 degrees in these tractor trailers. And the cartels, they don't care. They're just making so much money. And then the fact that our government doesn't speak out about this and doesn't get upset. This is an American issue. It's not a Republican or a Democrat. We don't want to see these people dying in our custody or in the custody of the cartels. So it's really, really just a total lack of law and order and accountability. Like Tom Homan said it perfectly, and I steal his line because he knows the border better than most people that I know in this country. And he said, for the first time now, it's actually legal to be illegally in America. Think about that. Such mixed messages to our kids and to our communities. It's disgusting.
It is disgusting. But you know what? This country was disgusting enough to elect Joe Biden, or select him if you prefer. I think he's an illegitimate president because I know what happened and the American people have the facts in front of them right now. We can go through the list of what happened in that election, and it was a vast left-wing conspiracy to deny Donald Trump his reelection. But leaving that aside, I am more appalled by the rancid corruption of the FBI and the DOJ, which was validated once again in the Durham report the other day. This is a corrupt federal government, corrupt federal agencies. I'm talking about the FBI. I'm talking about the intel community itself. These are scurrilous, low as snake belly lowlifes running these organizations that should be focused on the national interest and national security. But you and I can talk straight here, Derek. The American people don't have a government that's working for them. They've got a federal government that is targeting them, our middle class, working men and women, their family. These are Marxist globalist elites who are trying to destroy this country. Otherwise, there is no excuse for the federal government not going after those drug cartels and telling China to get the hell out of our country with deadly drugs of any kind and end this nonsense with Mexico. This country doesn't have a good record going after third world countries. Mexico is an emerging country, but I have to tell you, I don't want to just put it on Mexico because this belongs on China as well. And either this country has leaders with the guts to say the hell with anyone. I don't care whether they are an emerging superpower like China or an emerging country like Mexico. We are the American people are tired of being screwed with by their media, by their government, by our enemies abroad. When is this crap going to end? When will there be a sense of reality?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, look, I refer to this as like seagull leadership. So Joe Biden, the border czar, and some of these clowns that they have running these agencies have done the seagull. They poop and they fly away. So the next president, Republican or Democrat, has to clean up this mess. And this mess is something we've never seen before, because internally now these people are in our country, and God forbid, we don't know what they're planning. But, you know, like over the weekend, 8 more dead in Portland, Oregon. We had 18 dead not too long ago in Milwaukee. We had 40 that were poisoned in Onondaga County, upstate New York, just a while ago. Every day I track the mass poisonings in this country, Lou, and just that alone pisses me off that we're not talking about this. Why hasn't the president declared a public health, national security emergency and had a summit at the White House and got the most famous celebrities, athletes, social media influencers? You know, Lou, one thing that pisses me off right now is that the Democrats are smart enough to bring in social media influencers to the White House to push out their nasty lies about their campaign and all the victories they've had. But why are they not using those social media influencers to talk to the kids? Tell the kids to stay away from these fake pills and only get pills if it's prescribed by your doctor and comes from CVS or Walgreens or reputable pharmacy. The problem is there's no excuse for that. And I've called them out in Congress, and I still haven't had anybody tell me we're moving down in that direction and having this done. So how do you explain that, Lou? You've been around and you know this stuff better than I do. How do you explain that they're not even willing to talk about the deadly poison coming in and use these social media influencers to do it? Makes no sense to me.
Well, I think I can make some sense out of it. One is Barack Obama was talking about his third term of office while he was president. Joe Biden is nothing more than a compromised, impaired puppet president. And I believe that he is quite clearly taking his orders from a cabal of Marxist Dems. And I believe that cabal is led by its chieftain, that is Barack Obama. That's my view. I can find no other explanation. When I look at what is going on about all of the discussion about the corruption of the Biden family, I buy most of it. But the part I don't buy is the big guy. I really think that the big guy in the Biden crime family is Barack Obama. He is the guy who was in charge of our government when the intel chiefs took after Donald Trump before he was even elected. He is the same guy who allowed his intel chiefs to sign a letter and 51 veterans of the intel community lying through their teeth about Russian disinformation. So let me tell you, we have a government that is conspiring against us. We have a party, the Democrat Party, that is the Marxist Dem Party. They mean to destroy the American family, the American way of life, and our middle class, as well as everything about this republic, whether it's then they tell everybody what they're going to do. They're going to pack the Supreme Court. They're straightforward about it. They mean to destroy this great constitutional republic. Do you think I could be possibly correct in that view?
Well, I can tell you for a fact, because I was there running the Special Operations Division, when it comes to the synthetic drug bombing campaign by China, Barack Obama was the president, Joe Biden was the vice president, Eric Holder was the attorney general, and that started right around 2008, 2009 with K2 spice, bath salts, and then fentanyl. And by the way, Lou, what it is now is they're selling the tranquilizer for animals called Trank, xylazine, and they're pushing that from the Chinese websites into our country. They're making more powerful synthetic opioids like etinidazine, isonidazine, nidazine, which are new psychoactive substances that are now getting mixed into these fake pills and killing kids all over the country. And you know where that's coming from? China. So it's another phase in the unrestricted warfare to destroy America, destabilize America. And that all started under President Obama. And we briefed the Department of Justice on this, what we call perfect storm And we had an operation called Deadly Merchant to address this. And now look where we're at now.
Well, I think we've witnessed President Obama let his vice president sell the vice president's office and influence while in his second term. Hillary Clinton as well. Never an investigation of the Clinton Foundation. Do you think this federal government is just as crooked as it can be, folks? Because I sure do. We're going to continue here with Derek Maltz. And what in the world are we doing with China, with Mexico, and all that has aligned against this country, including the Biden regime itself? We continue with the Great America Show right after these words. Stay with us. Maltz and Derek, it's great to have you with us. And I want to turn to the issue that really is at hand when we talk about the border. There's an open border. There's a nasty crisis in fentanyl and every other deadly drug. We have a crisis in every direction we turn. There is not a single policy directive. There is not a single policy initiative on the part of this administration that is aimed at protecting the republic, the American people, and preserving our way of life. I can't find one. So what are we doing with all of these agencies? The FBI is worthless. It's nothing but a political arm of the Marxist Dem Party. The Department of Justice isn't interested in justice. It's interested in suppression. Where do we go from here?
Well, that's a great question. We have to unify the best and brightest patriots in one task force setting to be able to go after these threats, which are getting more and more sophisticated, more complex. And we have a lot of obstacles, like technology right now is a big problem. Like if you look at the Chinese money laundering systems that they've implemented for the cartels, we can't even really infiltrate them because they're using Chinese banking apps. They're using WeChat, which is not a U.S. company. And they're moving money like we've never seen in the history of this country. And they have Chinese students here in America on visas that are picking up suitcases of cash from the Mexican cartels. And then they're buying land. The Chinese businessmen are buying land, property, farms, and real estate and investments in our country. But the thing is that the only hope we have is if we stay united. Law enforcement can only do a certain amount. If you don't have prosecutions and extraditions and significant incarcerations, then you're not going to really deter the bad guys. So good example is what's going on now, Lou, in El Salvador with the new president. Apparently, I'm no expert on this, but in reading the news reports, he's built this supermax security prison, and he's putting all those MS-13 savages in that prison, and crime is down to an all-time low in the history of El Salvador, I understand, and it's actually becoming more and more safe. But in our country, we do the opposite. We get these people, and then we let them out the same day because of the bail reform and the progressive policies in these democratic cities around the country. I mean, just look at Chicago and New York and San Francisco as an example, or Portland, Oregon, or wherever. And these criminals they have no fear. They just go out, cause massive chaos. So if we don't stop that and hold people accountable, we're never going to put this genie back in the bottle. Right now, it's like we've never seen. I mean, they're breaking down glasses of shopping centers and going in and stealing everything, not getting, prosecuted. Even in the federal side, one of the biggest complaints for the families is that when these people are selling poison to their kids and killing them, they want to see murder charges. So we do have like some federal prosecutors, like in California, they just announced like 13 new indictments on these poisoning of the kids. But around the country, most of the prosecutors, they run away from it. And there's no accountability on the Department of Justice system to prosecute. Look what happened, Lou, with the 9 years of the bombing of corporate America's opioid pills. 100 billion opioids were pushed into America in a 9-year period, thanks to the Washington Post investigative story. And Big Pharma was never held accountable. They got fined here and there and stuff like that. But they just got so many Americans addicted to these opioids with no accountability. That's because the money that all of these law firms were making and all of these government people and somehow had their hand in the pot, it's corruption to the max. And that's now continuing at levels. Like when I read some of the Durham report yesterday, I was absolutely disgusted because I've worked with some great American patriots from the FBI. When they sign on to the FBI is fidelity, bravery, and integrity. These people believe that when they sign on. They look forward to a career in integrity and leadership, but they weren't getting it over the period of time when they're going after Trump and working with the Clinton campaign to destroy Trump. And the destruction is still going on with the former president, what they're doing to him and his family. And then you look at, why hasn't Hunter been indicted yet? I can't answer that, but I've been an investigator my whole life. My father was an investigator for 30 years. I have it in my DNA. You could see that one a mile away, the influence peddling and all of the corruption, but he's not been indicted. How do you explain that?
I explain it with just that word you just used. I mean, these people are so corrupt. They own the system. The FBI is owned lock, stock, and barrel by the Marxist Dems, and there are some good people, and a few of them have stood up and now are whistleblowers. But now whistleblowers and informants are disappearing, bringing information to the House investigation committees. We're dealing with full-on racketeering on the part of the Biden regime. He may be the big guy, Joe Biden. I think it is Barack Obama. That's my best bet. And with his godfather, George Soros, on his shoulder. This is a time for people to be straight. I'm not going to talk about what a great organization the FBI was, because now it's on TV, 4 times a week? I don't know how much they pay for those programs to talk about what great people they are, but I'll tell you this, it's pure nonsense. The leadership of the FBI is amongst the most rancid in this country. The CIA is the same. The intelligence community. Look at this Congress, the radical Dems. They put out information from those investigative committees in the House of Representatives. They leak it to the newspapers before they can even get the papers collated in those committees. I mean, it's outrageous what we're looking at. This is a fight, and the American people, all I just want people to understand here, I'm begging you, believe what you see. And what you have to be seeing is what the rest of us are. You hear Derek talking about fentanyl and the people dying from overdose and their lives being destroyed by addiction. And what's happening? How many people do you think we've got in federal law enforcement? We have the DEA, we have the ATF, we've got the Border Patrol, we've got intelligence agencies, the DIA, the CIA. Yeah, I mean, there are now 18 of them, most of them in the Department of Defense. What in the hell do they do all day? Well, they're not getting a job done anywhere. Not anywhere.
Well, one thing I could tell you, because I work very closely with, like ATF, DEA, Homeland Security investigations, and CBP and Border Patrol. Like, if you look at, I just got to bring up something because I failed to say it earlier, which is very interesting to me. When Donald Trump was in the office, the first 6 months of 2020, there were 236,000 apprehensions. This first 6 months, we've had 1.2 million. When he was in office, the first 6 months, there was a total of 1,326 pounds of fentanyl seized. Now we have 13.9 thousand pounds of fentanyl seized. So that kind of tells a story, like the production's off the charts, the demand is off the charts, the border's creating this unbelievable opportunity. But I do know, like, for example, the DEA last year, working with their partners, seized 57 million fake pills. That's a lot of pills, considering 6 out of 10 of those pills can potentially kill a person in America. So law enforcement is saving a lot of lives by seizing the poison, but this poison shouldn't even be getting here. We should be destroying those labs, aggressively pursuing the cartels, and decimating them. They are the biggest threat this country has faced. Even Mayorkas said at the end of March to the Senate panel that the deaths from fentanyl is the single biggest challenge we have in America, but yet the border is just like still wide open, consuming our resources, and this poison's getting in here in record levels, and we're still not dealing with it. And that's really, really disappointing. The law enforcement people, in my opinion, are doing a pretty good job at saving lives, but they can't do it without the support of the White House and the other agencies that are responsible for doing things internationally, for an example. So it's dysfunctional, Lou, if you want me to be honest. It's dysfunctional. There's no leadership. A leader is supposed to eliminate confusion, not create it. I mean, our leader is the migrant president. Even AMLO calls him the migrant president. So everyone knows this is about getting these people in this country, give them driver's licenses, give them benefits, give them voters, voter opportunities so the Republicans can never win again with the way it's going. Then if you add in mail-in ballots and anonymous voters, it's not fair. Even the elections, right? It's not fair. It's not going to get any better unless we take a more aggressive stance.
Let me be clear. Derek, I'm saying this to you and to the audience. Let me be clear. This country has the most corrupt government in the hemisphere. I don't care who talks about Mexico's corruption. I don't care about El Salvador. Venezuela. The United States government is the most corrupt in the hemisphere because they are so successfully pretending to be something else. The results are absolutely disastrous, destructive, and will mean the death of this republic unless we do something about it. By the way, the drug deaths, no reason for any administration to worry about it. It's just the cost of doing business. And that's what this is. It's the drug business. It's the cartel business. And they are running. I mean, look, no one has to. Let me ask you this as we wrap up, Derek. You're an investigator for years. If you're sitting there watching this White House not do anything about an open border, the result of which are deaths, devastation, destruction, doesn't the first thing that has to come to your mind, isn't it corruption?
100%. And let me just add to this, Lou, because you brought it up. When I used to go on the news all the time and talk about the corrupt leaders in Mexico, Central America, after a while, I kind of toned that down. You know why? Because I felt like a hypocrite. Who am I to criticize the president of Honduras or the president of Venezuela or Mexico when we have that going on in this country? There's no chance we'd be in this situation if it wasn't, corruption all over the place. I mean, it's very obvious. You don't have to be an investigator to see it. Like, we have to have law and order. And right now, there is no law and order. That's the problem. There's no accountability, no law and order. So the country is going to, ultimately on this path, it's going to go through a tunnel and off the cliff. And that's where we're headed, off a cliff, if we don't get this thing turned around.
Everybody remember where you heard it first, right here on the Great America Show. I said that the United States is the most corrupt government in this hemisphere, the most corrupt. And I mean every single word that I am saying. Derek, I appreciate you being with us. Derek Maltz, we respect you so much and for all you do, and keep the case in front of the American people. We have to do that. Thanks, my friend, for being with us.
Thank you very much, and have a great week.
Derek Maltz, a great American. Thanks, everybody, for being with us. Here tomorrow, our